Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Diwali in India. Happy Diwali. Can you hear me? Okay. So today is Diwali. And the reason I mention this is twofold. This is the Festival of Lights. So the traditional celebration of the victory of light, spiritual victory of light over darkness, of ignorance, of wisdom over ignorance. So we celebrate that here today and around the world in India. So I'm telling you this also because here in India, this is celebrated with 2 days of crackers and fireworks. So you may hear some of that tonight. So today, since it's been some time since we've been together while I was moving, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to come forward with your questions or with what might have come up for you over the last couple of weeks. And I'll offer you the whole period tonight to speak with me, to share your experience. Hello, hello, Coco. Turn on your microphone.
Namaste, Rishi. Hello,
Namaste,
everyone.
namaste.
Hello. How are you?
Namaskar.
Namaskar. Nice to see you. Nice to hear you. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I would like to have your your help regarding one situation which I'm now. And as you know, I also moved recently, and I landed here in a new place. And this is also a new flat. And in this flat, I met this person, like a woman. And it turned out that this woman um, is really aggressive to me, and I I often find myself in a situation when she's acting in this way to me, and I feel a lot her energy, which of course affects me a lot. And I I find myself now in this situation where I need to face almost every day this kind of situation with a lot of aggression and negativity. And of course I try to meditate a lot and to find the time to cultivate even more the meditation, and with my practice, and cultivate love and compassion. I always try to come back to her with this kind of feeling once I came back again to my center, to myself. But it doesn't work. So maybe, I don't know, I'm also asking myself why somehow I created this situation or person in my life. Maybe it's something that I need to work on, something that's a kind of mirror of a part of myself which I need to work on. I'm asking maybe sometimes these kind of questions, and my question maybe to you is, how can I work on that in the best way now?
These kinds of questions come up a lot for people when they face these kinds of challenges. You know, whenever we face this kind of challenge, there's always this question why comes up. What am I supposed to learn here?
Mm.
In some ways, I can say this question is not so useful. Mm. In the traditional psychological sense, we ask ourselves why, and we want to know what our role in the situation is and all of that. But in the spiritual sense, this question isn't particularly useful. And the reason is that it keeps the focus on the other, it keeps the focus on the outside, keeps the focus on something that's happening out here. But you know, the self is actually like a mirror. As we engage the inquiry, and in the way you're doing it silently in meditation and so on, coming back into meditation, coming into silence, opening the heart, this is a cleaning of the mirror, which we are, returning the mirror to its pristine state. The mirror remains unfazed by whatever it reflects. You understand? So the mirror is just there, and the mirror is empty of everything but light. But when someone steps in front of it, it appears that there is something on the mirror. But there is nothing on the mirror. There's just a reflection. So if you keep coming back to meditation, you keep coming back to silence, you keep coming back to the inquirer, not who is she and why is this happening, but who am I? What am I attached to? What is my mind following? What is it being trapped by? What am I experiencing? We're not saying you aren't having the experience. We're saying the experience is there. But the solution, if you will, you need a solution, is to realize that you are not the image on the mirror. You are the mirror itself. So keep coming back, keep meditating, keep coming to silence, keep opening your heart. But in addition to that, you can also meet this difficulty, this aggression in your meditation, not in the hallway, in your meditation, with love, with compassion, and with understanding. Because whenever there is this kind of a situation where someone around us is aggressive or challenging or experiencing difficulty or anger, if we understand that this is the expression of their suffering, of their belief that they are the limited body-mind, then for them we can have some level of understanding, some level of compassion, some level of forgiveness that goes along with not just opening the heart so that we are there to absorb their anger, but rather so that we meet that anger with, or that aggression, with love, with kindness, with understanding, right? This can happen And the main thing it does is it doesn't, this kind of attitude, you can say, is it doesn't cause us to go into this question of why, or why me, or why is this happening? All we know for sure is that it's happening. And so the question then can be asked, so how do I meet this? So the way you are intuitively going when you come through a moment of that, of coming into contact with that aggression, is to go into silence, to go into your own center of being, into this recognition that you are that which is aware here now, and you are opening the heart, you are washing, you are cleaning the mirror, you are letting go of that aggression. You are, for you, it doesn't exist. You can see what it is, but you see it just as a reflection of her difficulty, not of your being. Your being is awareness itself. So in this recognition, each time that you come in contact with this person, you are initially open. Because you've done your work, you've gone into silence, you've cleaned the mirror is clean again, you've done your work. This person comes, there's this attitude of aggression or whatever it is. That doesn't mean that you need to stay in it for a long period of time.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that at all. It means you can walk away from it because you see it clearly. This is her difficulty. I offer her love, compassion, understanding, and I walk away because I cannot do anything with this. I cannot do anything about this. She is the only one who can do something about this. So I offer her that blessing and I walk away. Are you living in the household with this person, or are they living in a different flat in the building?
No, it's a flat. It's the same flat, but I found a new place at the end of the month, so will be just for 1 month at the end.
That was going to be my next suggestion. This is not something you need to take on yourself. You just need to know that the situation is not a good one for you. So this is a way of protecting your sadhana, protecting your practice, giving yourself a clear space. If you cannot change this other person, and if you have the opportunity to step away, then step away. And that includes moving to another flat.
Yeah.
And all of this is just to keep saying to you that the practice is, I am that which is aware. That which is aware is here now. I am the self. I am not this, not this, not this. And this is hers. But realizing even that, recognize that you have a role to play for this next few weeks while you're there. And that is that you offer as much compassion, as much love as you can. But you know, it's important to understand, each and every one of us, that at certain times in our sadhana, that we do have limits around what we can do within our sadhana. That's based on where we are in our particular sadhana right now and how we understand ourselves. So we can use this experience to see how the mind, the emotions, the conditioning reacts within us to someone who brings this kind of aggression. But we don't need to act outwardly toward that person. We can just see the way that the mind reacts, the emotions react, the defensiveness comes up. We can see how that mechanism works, and we can increase our cleaning of that mirror.
Yeah.
And then we are using the situation that we find ourselves in order to deepen our self-awareness.
Yeah. Thank you. It's challenging, but yes, thank you.
Yeah, of course it's challenging. Yeah.
Yes. Because I don't want to cultivate these feelings within me, I don't want to reply with the same energy,
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is very difficult when someone is being very aggressive toward you and someone is coming at you with a great deal of negativity. It's very, very challenging to just keep quiet. to let them have their say, let them behave the way they're behaving, assuming they're not being violent, they're being verbally or emotionally aggressive, then it becomes your sadhana to remain present, remain aware, and remain quiet. One of two things will generally happen if you take this kind of sadhana up. The person will either begin to see that there's no reactivity, and they'll begin to lose interest in it, in this kind of aggression, in this kind of display of dominance, if you will. They'll begin to lose interest in it because it doesn't land. It doesn't, there's no pushback against it. Or they'll become more aggressive because they want a reaction.
Yeah.
But in either case, if you understand this is not me, this is not me, this is not me, I am not this, I am not this, I am not this, this is the mood, this is just what's playing out on the screen here. Yeah. And for this being who is suffering, I have compassion, and I am keeping quiet, then this both protects the open heart and keeps it open enough so that if that person feels the presence of the self within themselves through this reflective quality that you have, this quality of silence, then they will begin to calm, they will begin to settle. But don't have an expectation around it. Just do the best you can with it. Be compassionate toward yourself. Be loving toward yourself. Be patient with yourself. If you find yourself reacting, your temper is coming short, whatever, just be patient with yourself. It's not necessary for you to know what there is for you to learn. It's only necessary for you to be in it as long as you need to be in it. So you stand in it. By that I mean you be aware. You keep your heart as open as it's possible to, both to your own suffering and the suffering of the other. And you wait for the 3 weeks to come to an end.
Thank you, Rishi.
For each of us, transitions are always difficult. There's more to a move, as an example, or to coming into a new kind of relationship when it's a difficult relationship. There's more to that than just what appears on the surface. So just remember that for whatever reason, you are there, you make the best of it, you stand in it, you remain aware, you know when to keep quiet, you know when to be silent, you know when to meditate, and you know when to walk away.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Each of us is our own authority when it comes to our sadhana, to our spiritual life and our spiritual practice. And we often find ourselves in association with people who don't share that kind of outlook or that kind of intention in their own life. So it is really important for us to begin to understand that we possess the wisdom to know what is right for us in a given moment and to know whether we need to meet a situation outwardly. We have a conversation with that person. We need to express ourselves. We need to say no. And we also need to know when it's time to walk away. And then we need to give ourselves both permission and authority to understand what is it that is needed for me, not for me as a personality, but for me as a being who's walking with the intention to awaken in this lifetime. What is it? We put a lot of authority in a guru or a teacher, But in the final analysis, what a guru or a teacher does is he or she teaches us, how do I walk this path of aware, awakened living? And what do I need to do or change or see or understand about myself in order to live in this awakened manner? How do I do that? Not only how do I do it, but what do I need to let go of in order to do it? Yes. So part of what we are doing is we are learning to walk within our own authority, knowing what it is I need. And this means that we not only know when it's time to be quiet, we also know when we're not in the right place to be walking the way that we are intending to walk. And we need to change, sometimes physically in the world, to be around people who are more supportive, to be around people who are more loving, to be around people who support our journey, to find that community. And this can take some time. So this is what I mean by these transitions can be difficult. But understand it's just a transition. Stay with your intention to know who you are. And everything will come out in the end. It might take a little bit of time, but when the right situation is there for you, you will forget about this experience. And you will just know that it was what helped push you along to get you to the place that you needed to be. Have faith in your guidance, my dear. Have faith in your guidance. You are being guided somewhere. You are being led. There are no mistakes. So just keep going forward. You already know, you've already made arrangements. So you know the situation is not right for you. So trust yourself, trust your authority, trust your permission structure, and go forward with your sadhana, following your heart. Okay? Okay. Yeah, so this comment just came in, finding a safe, uplifting community to share satsang with. For me, it's everything. Yes. That's partly what I mean. Yes. We need to know what we need. And we need to make some effort to be sure that we're being self-supportive by knowing what we need and then finding what we need in order for us to continue on our way. So, okay, I can see all of the people in Europe who went through daylight savings time are all starting to check in now. So welcome everyone. Or maybe in America too. Yes, it's been interesting. The last couple of satsangs, we've had one group of people in at one time, and then an hour later, a whole other group of people joined, and we still have that going on a little bit today. So welcome everyone who's now just joining. So please check your time. And I will also say again, so today, happy Diwali for those of you who are just joining the Festival of Lights here in India today. This celebration of the spiritual victory of light over darkness and wisdom over ignorance. And one of the things that's true about India now, it wasn't true when I came here almost 2 decades ago. Diwali was, people went out and put butter lamps out on the front of the house and lit the wicks and had family and food and so on. But now with the increased prosperity in India, what has also become true of Diwali is it's 2 days of nonstop fireworks and firecrackers. So if you hear a very loud, sounding very close by explosion, please don't panic. It's just somebody shooting off a cherry bomb or an aerial rocket of some sort. Maybe one other comment I'd like to add to that comment about being in challenging situations is that the most direct and most pristine act of kindness that you can do for yourself when you are in difficult circumstances, whatever they are, whether it's another person or it's your job or it's something that's going on with your health or your finances, the most direct path is the simple remembrance, I am the self, or I am. This is the truest remembrance that you can bring to your own life, that you are that which is aware, and that everything else is coming and going. Everything else is rising, staying for a period of time, and then going. And the fact that this is true, the impermanence of all phenomena, of all life experiences, is the proof that you are the self. Because you are always the one who is here. And I mean that both in the sense of not you as the personality, but as the self, but also as you as the personality. Behind your personality is this direct perception. I am aware, isn't it? You know you are aware. And you are aware at the beginning of the circumstance that's rising. You are aware in the middle of the circumstances rising. And you are aware in the middle of the end of the circumstance which has arisen. You were aware yesterday. You will be aware tomorrow. You were aware 5 years ago. You were aware 10 years ago. Regardless of what the circumstances were, or what they are, or what they will be. That which is aware is here. And that is the common thread between all of us. This is what you share with everyone you come into contact with. And I promise you, it's enough for you to remember it. Even the other person doesn't know it. Even the circumstance doesn't know it. If you know that you are that which is aware, that you are the self, then the circumstances as they come and go are permitted in a way, you can say, to be self-liberating. And what I mean by self-liberating is if you do nothing about them, but you do remember, I am the self, eventually that circumstance will fall. The awareness will not fall. The circumstance will. This is your sadhana. The most direct way to know who you are is to know that you are aware. This is the revelation, if you will, that comes from the inquiry, who am I? When the I dissolves, the awareness shines. And your nature as being consciousness is realized and recognized. And you know in that moment it has always been so.
Rishiji, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
I just felt to comment, since you said also that if we keep our attention here, then the life will just offer us the necessary circumstances, the surroundings, the community. But I just see that for at least in my own journey, there is more and more of sensitivity happening, and this sensitivity towards energies or even functioning in a normal environment, then I just perceive much more. I'm not, sometimes I used to be more, let's say, I could work more with pressure, or even in the working environment, or even in the family environment, and it used to be a bit easier to kind of handle certain situations. But with this sensitivity, then I see that the sensitivity is increasing, but this detachment is not always there. So what you speak about, that by keeping our attention here, and then there's also more detachment happening, so that whatever is coming, you're able to deal with it in a more detached way. But I just see that sometimes this sensitivity is because maybe there is identification happening, but there's a subtle expectation that this detachment will also follow, so that it's maybe at times easier to handle some kind of conflict, or even some kind of situations where I just feel like there's just everything is coming through and I can perceive it much more, but I don't always have this capacity of staying as a detached witness and not feel certain energies, or just saying like, I see what is happening, but I'm not reacting to it in any way.
When you come up against this kind of an edge, the question what happens is we forget to ask the question. So when we see that we are now up against what we feel like is the limit of our sensitivity, based on our sensitivity, we say this is the limit of what I can open myself to at this moment. If you're going to move to the next level of non-reactivity, you can say, or non-attachment, that's the moment at which you have to say, who is it that is now saying, I can't take any more of this? Who am I referring to in that instance? What you're seeing is the very edge of where your sadhana or your practice has taken you. And now there is a sense of this far and no further. I can't handle anymore. So don't give me any more. And this is a very real feeling. It's a very real experience. I can't do this anymore. But in all honesty, you actually can. You can say, you can question that mind which is saying, I can only handle this much sensitivity. I can't handle the next level of sensitivity. Because understand that what's happening is now this personal sense of I, or me, it's not really the personal sense of I. On one level it is, but it's better to use the word me. The sense of the personal me is also the false sense of who I am, right? So it is true that you're up against it and you've done well up until that moment, and you've maintained an attitude of detachment or non-attachment up to that moment. But now you're right on the edge of it. So if you're going to break through, in a way of looking at it, if you're going to break through, then you have to use the inquiry right at that moment. You have to be willing to say, oh, no, wait, this I that says, or this me that says, I cannot take this anymore. I can't, I'm too sensitive for this. A minute ago, I was okay, but for this, I can't do that. Then that's the moment at which you really have to ask yourself, really, to whom am I referring when I say I can't take anymore, or I can't open anymore? Because what's happening is there is this identification that's happened, and it's saying, this is who I am. But it's not really true. So when we say at this moment, the direct path is the path of silence, it's not just the direct path, it's not just the path of outer silence, it's the path of recognizing that the mind is trying to tell a story. It's trying to establish a limit. It's trying to say, I don't want to go beyond here because if I go beyond here, I will die. My personality will die, my ego will die. I can't go beyond here. But this just isn't true. So the practice of silence at that moment becomes an inner silence, an unwillingness to listen to the reactive mind, and a willingness to question it, kind of say, really, is that really true? Because most of the time it's not true. It's definitely a limit in the mind, but it's a limit in the mind. It's a conditioned limit. It's not really true that we can't handle it or we can't do it. It's that we think we can't do it, or we think we can't handle it, or we think we can't go another step. But if we say really, and we go quiet, we see that we actually can be still in this moment. Remember that the practice at this time is not really an intellectual practice. It's the practice of remaining aware, remaining alert or present, and remaining empty. Empty is the most essential quality of those three in a moment like this. Because what we're doing by remaining empty, by seeing that the mind is trying to do some reactive dance and then remaining quiet and bringing the mind to stillness or emptiness or quietness, what we are doing is we are not feeding that conditioning. So we're not doing anything to oppose what the mind is doing. We're simply saying, I am not that. I am this awareness, this alert recognition, and this emptiness. And everything else that rises in that field is allowed to dissolve into that emptiness, into that stillness, into that silence. Okay? One of the things that is true of each and every one of you is that you have capacities for this kind of inquiry that you don't realize you have. And the only way you're going to realize that you have them is when you face these kinds of challenges within your own conditioning, within your own reactivity. These kinds of experiences don't last forever. But the awareness, which is here as presence, meaning awareness, alertness, and emptiness, presence. Not me being present, presence itself, awareness itself, consciousness itself. When you develop this capacity to have that be your default setting, that's where you go when you face these kinds of difficulties. You go to stillness, you go to awareness, you go to alertness. You might notice in your mind that when you say, I cannot maintain my detachment or my non-attachment, that what's actually happening is you are moving into the story. You are moving into the object. You are not remaining here as being consciousness or as alertness. You're in essence saying, I'm going back to sleep again. I'm going to believe this story of limitation. I'm going to go back into this belief structure because it's really all I know. But that's not true. You have these other tools. If you know that you can come to presence, to simple presence, this is not an intellectual process. This is an actual experience. You come to the simple presence, meaning you know that I am aware. You know that, but unequivocally. You know that energy or alertness is here. Light is here in the mind. And that mind, which is filled with light, is still and empty. And the heart is open. You possess reserves you don't realize you have. But as soon as you try this, you'll see that you do. Yes, Padma, good? Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Satyavad.
Rishiji.
Yes, hello.
Hello. I wonder if you could just, you alluded to the difference between 2 decades ago with the lamps and the lights and the butter lamps, and now the firecrackers. Could you just kind of, and perhaps share a bit about how the move was this last week?
Well, the move was the move. It's a transition, as I said, it's a transition. But I was happy to make the move, I've been looking for some time for a house with a garden and a veranda and a gazebo, something like that. So I'm happy to be in this place. So I have a little bit more space and so on. So. And I was led here, I feel, by Yogi Ramsarai Kumar, who really does somehow stand at the center of all of my work, because he's the one who really introduced me to the community in Tiruvannamalai. And when I came to this house, without bringing him up as a subject, I was meeting with the homeowner and her son, and she said, she knew I was a Ramana person, because people around here know that when you dress a certain way, look a certain way, and so on, they know that you are associated with Ramana ashram or with Ramana as guru and master. But she just, somehow in the conversation, she said, I think I was asking her, she lives in Chennai, and I was asking her where she grew up, and she said, I grew up here. And just out of the blue, she said, my father used to own the canteen at the train station. So the chai stall, and where they sell snacks and things for people getting on the train. And out of the blue, she said, and many days Yogi Ramsara Kumar would come and bring his coconut cup and tap on the window, and my father would open the window and pour tea into Yogi Ramsara Kumar's cup and feed him if he was willing to eat. And I just knew at that moment that this was the place that he was directing me to. So when I have that kind of an experience, I'm both happy And also I'm ready for whatever comes. Because I know it's the next thing, whatever it is, if there's a challenge or if there's something that has to be straightened out or ironed out, or there's something in the transition that doesn't feel quite right, then I know though that I can trust where I'm being guided. So this is one of the things I like to convey to you all, is to trust that in your life there are no mistakes. You are being guided, whether you know it or not. That was for me, that was a very direct revelation. At the moment she mentioned that her father was the one who was giving Yogi Ram Sarat Kumar his chai when he would knock on the window, I knew right away that I had no choice. I needed to be here. That this is where he wanted me at this moment, and so this is where I am. And that's been helpful as we work through any new relationship. When you move into someone's home, you move into a building or that they feel very close about and that they care about. You have to come to a new understanding of who they are, and what their expectations are, what your expectations are. And so I understand that. What was the other part of your question? Was it about the firecrackers?
Yes, you sort of. You mentioned that 2 decades ago there were butter lamps in the front of people's houses, and they invited their families in, and they had food, and now it seems to be more firecrackers.
No, they're not more firecrackers. Firecrackers in addition to. Yeah. Well, again, remember that what we're always talking about is the impermanent nature of our experience. Of what we experience. The world is always growing. It's always changing. It's always shifting. As we are. Part of what we do as sadhaks is we understand that we are that which is aware. We are here now as alert presence. And that the way to know the self is to remain in that empty recognition that whatever is coming and going is not me, and it's allowed to come and go. So it is different, but the recognition which is here now is very different from the recognition that was here 20 years ago. 20 years ago, it took only a few firecrackers to disrupt this sense of being, this sense of presence. That's not so much the case anymore. Now there's just an obvious recognition that things have changed, and that the one thing that has not changed is the awareness itself. In fact, this awareness has become more alert, more aware, you can say, more present in whatever is here. And so everything is just seen as the dance of emptiness or the dance of silence. That's how I view it now. Life is the dance of emptiness and the dance of silence. So this is always the place I'm at. I know I really don't leave the heart very much anymore. I stay in the center of being and let everything dance around. And that's true whether it's the circumstances with the houses or it's the firecrackers, or everything has changed here in Tiruvannamalai. Things have changed dramatically. When I came here 20 years ago, or I guess it's about 17 years ago now, this was a much freer place. You could walk on the mountain, you could spend your days on the hill, you could go up on Arunachala, you could walk around the hill, you could walk in the forest, you could be there. The Girivalam, the path around the hill, was a 1-lane road with dirt on both sides. Now it's paved 2 lanes all the way across, no dirt is left. The whole Girivalam is fenced. You cannot go on the mountain anymore. It's not permitted. You cannot walk up there. You cannot walk around in the forest. You can't spend your days meditating under a tree like we used to back in those days. I used to climb up on the mountain and go halfway up the mountain and find a big rock and spend the day up there, in meditation and walking and enjoying of the hill. You can't do that anymore. It's not permitted. So it's really changed a lot. But that doesn't change the essence of the sadhana that we are here to engage in. The presence of Arunachala, for me, just as a visual presence, even though I can't any longer walk on the mountain. This is a commentary also about my age. I can't climb that mountain anymore. So this big change has come also. So maybe the fence around the base of the mountain now is a symbol for what's actually happened to my physical presence, my physical body as well. I'm also fenced out physically, whether there's a physical fence there or not. So the reality is that what this has created, or what this has engaged for me, is this opportunity to recognize that whatever is here is appropriate. There are no mistakes. And my age, or the restrictions that have been put on the hill, all of those things are of great service in terms of stripping away the things that used to drive me here. It used to be that I had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I had to be on the hill at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I had, I was driven like that. I wanted to do that. Now that's gone. So in the morning I relax, I meditate at home, I sit with a cup of tea out on the veranda and look at the hill. And so in a way I can say it's been supportive of my journey inward also, to have the changes that have happened. And on a day like this, where there is just a huge commotion, and there's this constant, flashbang kind of noise going on, and people are everywhere, and lots of them are drunk, and all of this is going on, and families are meeting and having meals together and giving each other new clothes, and all of this is also going on the level of families. But what it's done for me is it gives me a day to be home. I don't want to go out in the crowds. I don't want to go out in the noise. I don't want, so I'm just home. And I've had the whole day to just be home, and now I'm here with you. And this is my life now, and it's beautiful. So we just use what we are given. Find a way to use it, to remain aware, to remain alert, to remain still, quiet, and empty. And in this way, it becomes possible to love whatever our circumstances are, wherever we are. And certainly love all the beautiful beings that are brought into our life as a consequence of this type of practice for sadhana.
So I guess that adds to when you mentioned that people came an hour later. This morning, Rishi and I were talking. Well, is he going to be at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock? And
yeah.
And so, rather than watch the sunrise, I did watch the sunrise and meditate and do my walk. But I came in and I turned on my computer, and there was Atma and Rishiji, so I knew we were starting at 7. And it's okay. The sun rose at 6:35, so it was like go out and meditate with the sun, and then do my walk and everything. But it seemed like a little bit more rushed. But I thought I had another hour,
Oh,
But so the difference in India.
So wait a minute. What happens when you find your personal story to be disrupted like that? Tell me that.
Ooh.
When you have your personal expectations disrupted, what happens?
Well, what I did today is I went out and I walked in my labyrinth, and I stood in the center of the labyrinth and I looked off to the right, and we have Red Mountain, right? I mean, I was looking at Red Mountain, and Arunachala, one of the definitions is Red Mountain. So I was right there and got centered and knew that. Yeah. It was really nice.
This is right. When we come to this place where when we feel that kind of, shimmering or shaking in our personal story or in our expectations, what we do is we go to that still place.
Yes.
This is the nature of sadhana. Before, we used to go into the reactivity. We used to go into the resistance. We used to go into the pushback. We used to go into the story of I want it to be this way, that way, or the other way. Now, we see that resistance start to rise. We see that there's a kerfuffle going on in our experience. And instead of going into the reaction or the reactivity, we turn toward the stillness of our own being. And we do that however we do it. In your case, as you say, you go to your labyrinth, it's one of your quiet places. You look up and you see the red hill. It reminds you that you are still mountain, Yeah. And then all is well. So this is the nature of sadhana. And it's by doing this over and over and over that we come to the realization that there comes a time when we are actually not doing anything. When we feel a disturbance coming in body, mind, or world, there's just a natural turning toward the stillness. It's just who we are now. We turn toward that stillness, that presence, that beingness. And eventually, that turning stops. We are simply here as the heart of being. And everything is allowed to whirl around in whatever way or fashion it wants to. There's no disturbance whatsoever, because that conditioning has been unraveled, undercut, let go of, however you want to say that. And this is what coming to being consciousness does. This is what coming to awareness, alertness, and stillness does. Is it just allows these roots of conditioning and this reactive quality of the mind and the heart to be undercut. And it's not because I am doing something. It's because there's a recognition that that which is aware is here now, and that is who I am. Very good. Very good.
And well, I'd just like to add that it seems so so much easier to get to that stillness.
Yes.
And
you see, the mind and the experiences we have condition themselves. But when we come into conscious process, what we start to do is we start to use that process, which has in the past conditioned us to a negative way of thinking, or to a kind of attachment, or to a kind of expectation. We take that same energy that caused that to happen, and we now apply it in a different way. But in the same way that our negative conditioning over years or decades or lifetimes becomes automatic, also this turning toward the self, this turning toward the recognition of being consciousness, also becomes automatic. And that's what you're experiencing, is that as you do it consciously, over time, it becomes easier and easier and easier. And eventually, you don't need to do it anymore. You simply are it.
There's a really beautiful, well, I keep saying over and over, within me, Om Karaya Namo Namaha. And take that breath and then breathe out compassion and fill myself with love. And yeah, it's pretty nice. Thank you for sharing.
Continue.
Yeah. Namaste.
Hi, Rishiji.
Hello, Ron.
Just on the last note, it seems to me, in my experience, that it's sort of this play between compassion on the one hand, when seemingly I'm following the attachments and aversions, which generally is not a strong suit, and then the other, which neither is, and it seems to me it's probably stronger, but still not. I don't know if discipline or earnestness, and it's sort of moving between the two in order to cultivate, it seems, getting the flywheel going, so to speak.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Yes. Yes, because this is why we have to realize that it's a conscious process, and we have to bring in some ways, not with a lot of intensity or effort, but we have to bring to it some qualities which we feel are helpful for us to bring us back to this recognition. And compassion is always helpful for people, because the very first thing that many people do when there's a realization or recognition that there wasn't, that we've lost it, we've somehow lost the thread, the very first thing we do is go into self-blame or self-criticism or self-concern in some way. And this is not particularly helpful unless it brings us to the recognition that we need to offer ourselves compassion, understanding, these kinds of loving kindness, these kinds of qualities. We need to offer that to the self, which is suffering through its own conditioning. We need to offer that. And then beyond that, we have to have, as you said, we have to have the resolve, we have to have the earnestness, we have to have the persistence to keep turning toward what we know to be true. And the final step of that, of course, is this realization, I am the self. So we have to keep turning toward that, out of the compassion of forgiveness and understanding and so on. We turn toward the recognition that even though we may have forgotten for a period of time, or we may have gotten lost in some aspect of our life, that we feel like we were taken away from direct perception, we still can. We have to have the ability. We use it. I say earnestness, or I say persistence, or I say you said discipline. But this is also devotion, because when we pull away from, through forgiveness, understanding, and compassion, toward our sadhana, toward self-discipline, toward persistence, toward earnestness, what we are really saying is, I am devoted to this liberation, and I am going to continue to make this turn over and over and over as many times as I need to. And in the life of a jnani, or one who's in the path of wisdom, this is actually a manifestation of bhakti, the path of devotion. Because it takes an intense amount of devotion to turn from what we are used to doing, what we are conditioned to do, what we have always done, to this way of opening and walking the path of wisdom with persistence, with discipline, with earnestness. This is the jnani's path of devotion. is to return over and over and over, no matter how many times I seem to fail.
Yeah, and on the surface of it, it seems to me that devotion is often towards an object, and this is, in a way, more difficult.
Yes, because it's not. It's actually it is, but it has the quality of an object too, because it still is. It's turning toward a way of being, or a way of perceiving, or a way of living, which is different from what I'm used to or I'm conditioned to do. So that's why I call it conscious process a lot, is because while we're doing that, we are engaged in some ways. There's a me that's shifting attention from this set of objects to this set of objects. There's that perception that that's happening. Yeah. But once this, yeah, go ahead.
Here there's an intuition maybe of how that way of being is, but there is no knowledge of how that way of being. I don't know if that's even possible, but
okay, that is definitely possible. That is definitely possible, because the path of knowing, which is jnana, is not the path of knowledge. The scriptures are very clear about that. You cannot use the mind which accumulates knowledge in order to understand the path of knowing. The only way you can understand the path of knowing is to walk it moment by moment, day by day. And the mind can't come along with that most of the time. The mind gets in the way of this direct perception of knowing. Yeah. So that's definitely the experience. So I would just encourage you to trust that sense of what you're calling intuition. This is not my intuition. This is the knowing of the self which is drawing you in, which is calling you home. You are answering that call. And you have been answering that call for a long period of time. We've had this conversation before. So just know that what you are calling intuition, I would call that the self is calling you home. So same. And you are listening. When you say, I just take it as an intuition that this is true, you are listening.
Yeah, but I guess in the moments where I'm less conscious, it's harder to remember that.
Yes. But that's why we have satsang. Is so that when we lose our way, we have the opportunity to be reminded.
In a way, that's why I like being in India, where you're just surrounded with all these objects that are reminding you of that. You go into
yes, and yet
anywhere,
and yet it is so surprising how after we, all of us, after we live here for some period of time, the way the ego works, the way that the ego co-ops our intention is that it takes even the most beautiful and the most exalted objects and makes them commonplace, and we stop seeing them and we go right back to our storyline. So it's easier in India because these objects are all around. In some ways, I can say that from my own experience. It is easier, even over the long haul, to be reminded by the objects which are here in this very spiritual culture. In this culture which has grown out of its spirituality, right? But the work of self-remembrance still belongs to each individual. And that's true whether you are here in Tiruvannamalai or you are wherever you are. That's part of our sadhana. It's this cultivating this ability to self-remember, to turn away from our old ways of conditioned reactivity to what we're experiencing, and to come into this natural space of silence and presence, even in the midst of the objects of our patterns of old conditioning. And the reward for that is that once you are recognized, once you realize that you are that which is here as being consciousness, as awareness itself, then you can actually be anywhere. Because the recognition of awareness itself, of alert presence and of stillness, that's manifesting within you. That is who you are. And now you can go wherever you need to go, want to go, feel to go, or are required to go.
On that last part, which I guess connects to, I think, the first dialogue, in my, I guess, personality, I oftentimes in more sticky, let's call it, situations like relationships and such, I have zero clarity on what's the direction I should go. So the spontaneous sort of unfolding that it seems like the jnani lives in, it's not something to, is it something to cultivate as well? Or is that just, it just happens as it happens?
If you cultivate moment by moment recognition that that which is aware is here now, then what you're talking about are the qualities of or tendencies of a particular mind. Yes, they just begin to dissolve. Because I'm not really, I offer these pointers and they can seem like a practice, but I'm not really offering you a practice because I don't want you to shift one set of beliefs for another set of beliefs. I want you to see who you are. And I want you to see yourself as the self, as that which is aware. And know that if you simply do that, that these qualities which seem to disturb you when they come up, will eventually dissolve. They have to. Those qualities you're describing are the stories which you have come to believe about who you are and how you react and how you respond and what happens in the mind under various kinds of circumstances. So that's all well and good. Now that you know that, understand that you are not any of that storyline. This is the first step. You first have to recognize, oh, I just lost my clarity again. Okay, I'm not that. I know that. I am back now. I am here now. I see that I was distracted, I was lost, I was confused, I was dazed, however it comes for you. I was reactive. You see how it comes? Oh, but now I see that I'm back. Or this presence is back. Okay, so now this is who I am. This is who I am. That is who I am not. So you have to, you have to engage this as a sadhana.
With no expectation this would actually solve the situation.
Having an expectation that something will solve the situation is the premier block to solving the situation. So yes, this expectation that something needs to be solved or needs to be, that a problem needs to be solved, that my life is a problem, that my mind is a problem, that my attitude is a problem, that my conditioning is a problem, this has to be dropped. The reason I say that is because you are none of that. You are none of that. I can say to you over and over and over for years, you are none of that. But until you start to realize that you are none of that by confronting it in the moment, as soon as you come back to awareness, as soon as you come back to any level of clarity, you have to know, you have to confront, I am not that. I am not that. I was behaving badly again, or I was misunderstanding, or I was living in a moment of ignorance. Yes, but I am not that. Then who am I? If I am not that, if I'm not those bad habits, if I'm not that conditioning, if I'm not that acting out, whatever it is, then who am I? This is the root of the inquiry. So then you're using all of these momentary forgetfulnesses when you come back to remembrance in order to put yourself more deeply into the recognition of the question, who am I? The emphasis can never be on where you fail. It has to always be on the coming back. Recognizing I failed again, but I am back. When the emphasis is there, you begin to recondition your own experience. That's not something I can do for you. It's something you have to do for yourself. I can only point the way.
Yeah, you're right. I think that self-judgment is a stronger conditioning than the underlying whatever vices there or whatnot that it's judging.
Yeah. Yeah. But even that insight, as valid as it may seem, is completely unnecessary, because the truth of the matter is you are not that. You're not the underlying quality, you're not the manifested quality, you're not any of that. So then the question can naturally arise, well, I'm not what the mind understands about it, I'm not what the mind decides about it, I'm not what the personality thinks about it, I'm not what the expectations are, then who am I? You know, I know you've heard me say this over and over in satsangs and things, but one of the first things we have to do is we have to stop believing that we know what we are, or we know what we think is true. This is opposite to the inquiry which says, I don't know anything, who am I? Who am I? I don't want to believe this mind anymore. It's not serving me anymore. I can use this mind to do my job, but I don't want this mind to define who I am. Those two things are very different. I can do my job. I can sit at my computer. I can dig that ditch, whatever it is. You know, I can be a mom. I can be a dad. But that's not who I am. Who am I? Those are my roles. Those are the ways in which I use the mind. But who am I? Put all of that aside. If you come out of the space that you know nothing, that you understand nothing, and you never will, then you can come to the place not only of awareness, not only of alert or light-filled presence, but also of emptiness. If there's not this quality of stillness or emptiness, which is tied together with awareness, then the mind will fill that space and give you all sorts of storylines. And now you will be aware, You will be alert, but you will be alert and aware in a story, in an illusion. This is that whole description in Advaita that the world is illusory. This comes from this recognition that I am alert, I am aware, and all of this I see around me is real, rather than I am alert, I am aware, and I have no opinion about any of this. This mind is empty and it is still. It's in that combination of qualities that the truth shines its own light through us, that we come to understand what is the nature of being consciousness. But until this mind is told, please go over there, calm down, I'm not listening, it keeps filling that space of silence, of stillness, of emptiness. Doesn't it? You may have noticed. It just keeps filling that space. And it goes on continuously. And this is why in the traditions, it's always said, emptiness is form and form is emptiness. Pointing us toward the Heart Sutra, pointing us toward the recognition that yes, this dance is going on. Things are rising, staying for a period of time and going, but all is empty of any self-nature. The only thing which has nature is the self, not the objects which are rising and falling on the screen of awareness. Keep at it.
Will do. Thank you, Rishiji.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I thought maybe tonight we would have a shorter session because of all the noise, but it seemed that in the silence of being, the noise went away. So we are still here in this silence of being. So I wish you all a good day, a good night. May be happy, peaceful, and filled with light. Happy Diwali. Hari Om Tat Sat.
Mm-hmm.